Hi, I'm Kevin Rutherford. Welcome to RG's Talent Tips. Today I'm going to show you an overview on how to create metrics that improve HR's business impact. But before we get started, I just want to let you know today's session is going to be longer than normal. I usually teach this segment as part of a more comprehensive 3 to 5 day training program on human capital metrics and analytics. But today I'm going to give you the condensed version. So with that out of the way, let's dive right in. Over the last decade, the HR measurement space has really evolved pretty significantly. The changes have brought the availability of increasingly sophisticated tools, new frameworks, a broader range of required talent within HR, and most importantly, greater opportunities to directly impact the business. In my opinion, the use of HC metrics and analytics has been one of the major contributing factors for HR gaining a newfound respect from business leaders. Human resources functions are commonly focused on moving the activities of their generalists or other HR professionals out of the transactional realm and into the strategic. This transformation from a reactive service provider to a proactive business driver requires increasing sophistication of measurement capability. And while most organizations now measure something within HR, what we often see missing is one thing that can make or break your analytics credibility. And that is the lack of a definitive standard around defining, selecting, analyzing, and taking action on HR metrics. Metrics are what drive analytics, so they must be right from the start. So now let's dig into what it takes to really create a set of standards for reliable and accurate measurement capability. I want to start with a framework for building out your metrics. This lays the foundation for a solid platform of measurement standards. So from here, organizations can then build solid reporting, analysis, and decision-making competencies. So let's take a quick look here. Move this. Make it a full slide. Okay, so what you can see here is a 4-phase comprehensive framework that we use in building out a metrics and analytics program. And I'm going to start here and just kind of go across pretty quickly. So the first thing that we want to start with in phase 1, as I mentioned before, is that everything starts with business strategy. Notice here you want to select strategy aligned HR metrics. And underneath that, there's a few key kind of components. First thing that we want to do is assess the business requirements for HR, meaning we want to connect what's going on in the business with the HR side so that the two are integrated. You always hear me say that integrated, not aligned, but really integrated. They must be tied together. The second key thing that we're going to look at is identifying measurement areas. What is it that the business is doing that we need to be taking a look at and measuring in a significant way? Third key thing is selecting a variety of metrics. And the reason we want to select a variety of metrics is for two things. Number one, context, and number two, broad application to see if it gives us any insights of other things going on in the business. Next, we want to review common HR metrics. These would be things like maybe cost per hire or training hours per FTE, things that you normally do, they're just common. Doesn't mean that you have to do them all, but we want to look at those ones that are most common, ones that your business is asking for. And then lastly, we want to evaluate potential metrics. And here what we're looking to say is, what are those things that what are the business questions that need to be answered and the ones that they have been asking? That's where we want to focus. So once we kind of have this, we then move to phase 2. And this is kind of the heavy lifting. You're collecting and really benchmarking data to be able to get to where you want to be with metrics. The first key piece is standardize your metrics definitions. This is probably the single most important thing, because if you don't have data correct from the beginning, you're going to be in a world of hurts. Meaning, as an example, somebody could be measuring, let's say, turnover from the beginning of the month, and somebody else may be measuring turnover from the end of the month. Those two statistics can be very different in terms of how the business operates, and more importantly, how they react to your analysis. The next key thing that we want to look at is translating raw data and then using internal and external benchmarking resources. And the reason for that is every business wants to know what's going on externally, and then a lot of times they want to know what's going on internally. How are we doing against ourselves? Are we bettering our best? Can we get better? That's really kind of part of our focus today, and I'm going to get more into that. But once you've kind of got this foundation and you've got all those pieces in place, you can then begin to move into step 3 and 4, or excuse me, phase 3 and 4. And that would be communicating results and informing decisions. And here we want to be able to equip HR to communicate effectively, meaning that you're going to be talking a lot about the interpretation of analysis, so interpretation and the recommended actions and how that's going to impact the business. That's really what you want to be able to do, is tell a story with data. I've got other videos on how you do that, how to tell stories with data, and those are ones that you should focus on. And then lastly, it's informing business decisions. Now this is optional, whether or not you would like to build an HR dashboard or create a customized dashboard. The key here is focus on those things that drive business outcomes. That's the whole key. But for our purposes today, now that you have a kind of an overview of how to do it, our focus for today is going to be on these first 2 phases right here. We're going to save this for later. Again, that's in a different video, but today we're going to talk about these 2 pieces. If this is not right, everything else is wrong. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say. So, next thing I want to do is look quickly at what we call the hierarchy of metrics. And in this slide, we can see kind of a hierarchy of sorts upon which all measurement capability is built. While sophistication of measurement capabilities may vary from one organization to the next, or even across organizations, all are built on a set of measurement standards of definition and understanding. So, let's start at the bottom with data. As we move down here at the bottom, one of the things that we see is this all drives what we're looking for. The first thing we're going to do is take a look at measurement standards. We want to be able to agree on how human capital items will be defined and measured and interpreted. Probably the most important thing. We have to have one source of truth, so to speak. The second key thing we look at is data distribution and also reporting, because extracting data from its original sources and then manipulating and integrating as necessary, those are critical pieces in terms of delivering things to the business. Third key component is data analysis. Here we want to translate data into information, find those connections, and more importantly, identify root causes. The fourth step we want to look at is what we call modeling and forecasting. And modeling and forecasting is really developing models of workforce behavior. What are the things that people are doing differently? And then also forecasting internal and external needs around capabilities. Lastly, the pinnacle of this then is to really use it for strategic decision making, leveraging analysis in both business design and business decisions, and also in process improvement. So now that we look at what happens if you do not have standards that are laid out, because this is kind of our whole process for getting from where we are to where we want to be. So again, when we look at standards for the standards that are missing, the foundation of measurement standards, if it's not rock solid, the rest of the capabilities in that measurement hierarchy, those 5 levels we just discussed, become less reliable. So there's 2 common root causes or issues that we see, right? The first here is what we call inconsistent application of formulas or reporting rules. And then the second one is inappropriate interpretation of results. Both are a killer to your reputation and impact if you don't have these rights. When you have them, specifically measurement consistency, meaning that the business has mistrust of the reports and analysis that you're doing. They also may have your analysis is not repeatable going forward. And then when they also lack understanding of your results, they may take inappropriate action, or there will be opportunities for improvement that are either missed or overlooked. And when I think about this, the way to counteract it, and counteract these really root issues that drive what I call inactionable analysis and a lack of credibility, organizations can adopt measurement standards that establish two things: agreed upon formulas and a shared understanding of their metrics, meaning their meaning and their relevance. That leads us into our next discussion. And that here is really, so what exactly is a standard? In its simplest form, a measurement standard documents a formula to be used consistently and establishes a shared understanding of the measurement or metric meaning. So, two areas here. First is having an agreed upon formula. If we look at this, this is a formula that will be used consistently across the organization when reporting either measurement or metric results. So let me give you a couple of examples. Questions that may answer this, may address this are this. So the first one might be, what head count should we be using in our formula? Another question may be, should we use a rate or a ratio to measure a particular topic? The second area here that we look at is having a shared understanding. And what example is, or what does that mean? That's really kind of a comprehension of a measure, meaning, and understanding, and this is the most important, that enables an interpretation of the results within the organization's context. Not everybody else, but within the organization's context. So, some sample questions here that this area may address are, number one, what does the measure tell us about our performance? Is our result good? Is it bad? Or is it indifferent? What does the measure not tell us about our performance? Establishing standards is only a first step towards implementing an individual measure within an organization's total measurement capability. Think of it as your toolbox. The process really begins with selecting and understanding a measure, and then from there, organizations must agree on a specific formula, which you're seeing here, and then outline the specifications of the source data, meaning where's it coming from, before the measurement is calculated and reported. So let's take a look here at our next slide. In terms of understanding and documenting metrics, there are 5 key steps to making sure that the metric is ready for inclusion into your measurement Rolodex or toolbox. Implementing a measure really requires understanding and documenting formulas, systems, and processing rules, as well as ongoing monitoring. So let's go through each one. I'm going to go through each one. So the first one here is understand measure definition and purpose. What we want to do here is to preview or review the metric to ensure that the formula and the interpretive text are understood by everyone. Further, we want to ensure that the measure's purpose matches the measurement need of the organization. Is this measuring what the organization needs, not what we want or what we think, see, or feel, or believe should be there? Is it what the measurement the organization needs? The second key thing that we're going to look at is understanding variations and their implications. If a variation of the core metric is to be used, you need to define the formula of the variation and then outline exactly what alterations need to be made to the core metric. Now, you may be unfamiliar when I say variation, but when I say variation, a quick example of that would be a standard metric might be training hours per FTE or full-time equivalent. A variation of that metric could be something like training hours per employee or training hours per FTE related to management skills or training hours per FTE for high potentials and so on. The idea is it drills deeper down into the organization and creates further segments. Now you can have a number of variations, but the question is whether it's important enough to drive business results. That's the key. Number 3, we want to identify relevant data sources. And so what I suggest here is that you work with the technical data owners. Those would be people in IT, maybe your HIRS group or payroll, to really identify the systems and tables that contain the data to be used for the inputs of the metric formula. Understand who controls and updates these systems, how frequently they're updated, and more importantly, how they relate to or differ from data in other systems. Knowing where you get the data is absolutely critical. Number 4, define the fields and rules. And here what we're looking for is working with technical contacts and or other staff members who enter in the query data into the systems on a regular basis to document which fields contain the relevant data. In essence, go right to the source. Document any rules that are to be applied to the data when it's being processed. And lastly, number 5, before we can actually we want to put this measure into production. But before we do, we've got to do all of these things. We have to understand our measure, definition, and purpose, understand, again, the variations and their implications, identify relevant data sources. We want to define fields and rules. And then lastly, now that we've done all this, we can now put the measure into production. So here we want to develop a reporting procedure for pulling the relevant data on a regular basis, calculating our metric results, and then reporting them to the appropriate parties. More importantly, we want to assign this accountability or assign accountability for this to each step of the regular reporting process. Monitor any changes over time to ensure the accuracy of the data and any rules that we might apply. So next, let's move on to interpretation. Now, what's interesting here when we look at interpretation is that there's what we call three components of metrics interpretation. 3 things that we look at. For metrics results to be useful in taking action for improved performance, executives, managers, and analysts must all be able to interpret those results appropriately. To do so, we suggest focusing on these 3 components when you want to measure interpretation. So let's take a quick look here. The first one, I'm going to go down these 3 and then talk about how they match with this. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to translate the formula, right? What does the measure indicate, right? What does the measure indicate? What is being measured by that formula? And then I think more importantly, what does a result of X percentage or X, Y, or Z tell me, right? The second thing that we want to do is we want to, pardon me here, jumped on me, contextualize the results. And when we talk about contextualizing results, we're saying, what do measure results mean? Okay? In essence, what we're looking for here is what do high results versus low results indicate? And then how will our interpretation of high or low results depend upon the organization's context? Lastly, our third bullet point is we want to identify relevance. Okay? Why is this measurement topic important? Why? So let me go over here and write in, important. Why are employers interested in measuring this? What impact does this measure have on human capital management? So these all are really those 3 components we want to look at when we're talking about interpretation. Translate your formula. What does the measure indicate? Contextualize results. What do the measure results mean? And then lastly, identify relevance. Why is this measurement topic important to the business? So let's move on now to defining. This is our last segment. We want to move on to defining targets. So defining targets is the goal here of a target is to really answer an organization's question, their primary question. What should our results be? And unfortunately, for the vast majority of measures, There is no simple answer to that question. Desired results often differ by industry, location, forecasts for the future, and most importantly, individual organizational context. You keep hearing me talk about context. What one organization experiences is very different from another. No two organizations are the same. That's why it must be applied to you. So it's absolutely critical that your organization consider a range of data sources and target types in order to establish targets that are best suited to your organization's context and goals. So what I'm going to share with you here are 5 data sources that may help you. The first thing that we're going to look at is what we call past performance. And one of the things we want to know here is, how have we performed in the past? Because this may impact how quickly we can move to short-term targets, intermediate targets, and reaching a desired target over time. The next thing that we want to look at in terms of a potential data source is one that all business leaders, particularly your CEOs and C-suite, they're interested in external benchmarks. How is our performance compared to that of others? Oftentimes peers, industry, etc. So where do those benchmarks are relevant, they may help point the way towards needed improvements in your business. A third area that we want to look at is internal benchmarks, right? So we've looked at the external, now we want to look at internal. And here what we want to say is, how has various workforce populations performed differently? Maybe one geographic region has performed differently than another. Maybe one set of leaders has performed differently than another. We need to know our pockets of internal benchmarks. Who's doing it well, who's doing it okay, and who's doing it poorly. Because we may wish to set different targets over time for units or functions at varying performance levels. Next thing we want to look at is what we call forecasts. This is that fourth element in terms of a data source. Here we're basically saying this: what do we expect our future context to be? Now, past performance, internal and external benchmarks, all of those must be considered in light of expectations for the future to determine our desired performance. And then lastly, the thing that we're going to look at here is what we call executive team mandated goals. I'm sure none of you have ever had that, right? And I say that jokingly because almost every executive team, CEO or somebody has a pet goal or project that they want to achieve. But realistically what we're saying is, what goals have been passed down to us? Mandated goals related to performance on this or any other metrics are certainly going to influence the desired results. And with that, I'll call it a wrap. I know this was a lot, but I wanted to ensure that you had the whole picture, because HR metrics and analytics are vital to your organization's success. They're also critical to building HR's credibility and its ability to contribute in a more strategic way. Without measuring and tracking the HR metrics that matter, it can be difficult to pinpoint how your work makes a difference, or quite frankly, how you can improve on your efforts. So if you aren't measuring any human resources metrics right now, have a conversation with your executive and HR teams. Identify which data the business needs. Let me say that again. Identify which data the business needs to deliver on its strategic objectives. Keep it simple. No need to start running dozens or hundreds of reports right away. Matter of fact, I always suggest focusing on the critical few versus the inconsequential many. Keep those for the HR team. Now, if you are measuring some HR metrics already, triple check that all of your data is helping your organization reach its goals. There must be a direct connect, an integration, so to speak, between the goals, the organization's business strategy, and your metrics. Are we measuring the right things? All right. So I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new that you can apply right away. If you did and want more, please subscribe to our channel below and check out our website for even more content, handouts, and free tools that will take you from where you are to where you want to be. Until next time.